All right, so the next thing we're going to do, we're actually going to use that information to graph a parabola. So as we go through that, there are some nice steps of what that looks like for you. So again, if I go too fast, that's fine because all you have to do is pause the video. So the very first thing I want to do, I want to always determine which form I have and then just kind of make mental notes if it opens up or down. So I look at this one and I'm thinking, okay, I've got 3x squared minus 12x minus 1. If you're like, where's that? It's right over here. And so I think, all right, that's just standard form. It's positive 3 out in the front. So I know that it's going to open up, but this, I'm going to have to determine my A, B, and C for this one. So that's what I'm going to do right away. So I'm going to write down A equals, B equals, C equals. All right, then I'm going to go back because I get excited about what I'm doing because I know what I'm doing. But for you, let's see what number 2 says. Find the vertex. Okay, so in order to find the vertex, I'm going to go back to my A equals, B equals, and C equals. So A equals 3, because your A is always in front of the x squared. B equals negative 12. Super important that you see that negative. And then C is minus 1 or negative 1. Okay, so now I'm going to find the vertex. How did I find the vertex? Well, your vertex is the point where it turns, and so the very first thing you have to do is figure out what's your x value of the vertex. So x equals, in this case, the opposite of b all over 2a. If you're like, how do I know that? Because we found that up in the vocabulary section. So if I look here and I go through and do the math, the opposite of b, so it's negative 12 already, so the opposite of that is plus 12 all over 2a. Well, 2 times 3, I'll write it down just so you can see it, but there it is. So that is 12 over 6, so that equals 2. So, kind of as I'm going through it, I'm going to hit and see what the next one says as well. So this is sketch the axis of symmetry. Realistically, I'm going to sketch the axis of symmetry first because I know that the axis of symmetry is at x equals 2. So I'm going to come over here, grab my dotted line, x equals 2. That's my line of symmetry. So I'm just going to draw that right away. The reason is because the axis of symmetry is where my parabola basically folds in half. So the vertex will always be on that. So if my vertex is at, like my axis of symmetry is at x equals 2, then I'm just going to take this x equals 2 and plug that back into my original formula. And because I'm a little bit squished for space, I'm going to go up to the top right here, and when I plug in that 2, this is what it'll look like. I'm going to take 3 times whatever my x is squared minus 12 times whatever my x is minus 1. So this is how I'm going to find the y value of my vertex. So I know that the x value is 2 because I did the work of the formula that I know. And then I'm going to say, so if x was 2 at my axis of symmetry, then 3 times 2 squared. Well, you have to do the 2 squared first is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. Minus 12 times 2 is 24. Minus 1. So 12 minus 24 is negative 12. And minus 1, so 2, negative 13. So there is my vertex. So really it's all just going through and crunching the numbers. And if it takes you some time to practice at that, that's fine. That's an okay thing to do. So I know my vertex is at 2, negative 13. So I find 2 down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh no! 11, 12, 13. Okay. So there's my vertex. I have now graphed it and I have sketched my axis of symmetry. Now what do I do from there? Well, now find the y-intercept. So then I go way back to when you were a little kid and I say to find the y-intercept, set x equal to 0. got it. So put x here, y here, and I'm going to find the y-intercept, and I'm probably going to end up finding x-intercepts later, so I'm going to write that down in a second. So, yep, I'm going to find my y-intercept, then I'm going to find my x-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, set x equal to 0. Okay, so then I just go back to that original equation, because that's what I'm doing. I'm just plugging stuff in. So set x equal to 0. Well, what you'll notice is when you set this equal to 0, you get 0 minus 1. So to find the y-intercept, set x equal to 0, I get negative 1. So that is right here. Okay, if that's the case, even though this doesn't specifically say it, if I have that on one side of my axis of symmetry, then I'm going to go over and make the mirror image on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to find x-intercepts by setting it equal to 0, that original thing equal to 0. And so if I do that, so I'm just going to write it down here, 3x squared minus 12x minus 1. And I think about factoring that, and there's no way that that's going to factor and give me 12 in the middle. So I just go back to my original. I already wrote down the A equals B equals C equals, and so then I'm just going to go through the quadratic formula. And if you're like, how do I know that? Because I've been singing at you for years. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So if at any point in time, because I skipped some steps and just did them in my head, if you're like, how did you get that? Then stop the video and figure it out, because it's important that you can use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to go through, so that's a plus 12 plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac. So that's actually 144 plus 12. 144 plus 12 gives me square root of 156 all over 6. Now because I'm actually graphing this, I need to know what those points actually are. So I'm just going to grab my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to push in 12 plus the square root of 156, enter, divided by 6. Okay, so when I do the plus way, I get 4.082. And when I graph that, it's just a tiny bit above 4. Then I do the minus. So I go 12 minus the square root of 156, enter, divided by 6. And that gives me negative 0.08, which is pretty close to 0. It's a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's right about here, right about here. They're pretty close to where you were before. And now, last, plot any other points if needed. Now, I have 5 points, and so I feel pretty confident with that. So now I can just take, I know that it's going to look like a parabola, so I draw it as neatly and as wonderfully as I can. So there's example number 1. We'll stop the video here, and then if you need help with the next one, that's the next video.